Patrick Mahomes is not QB1. Does Aaron Rodgers bounce back? All that and tight end rankings coming at you right now. Robby, let's dive into this. We're going to go over our top 12 quarterbacks, hit on our top 12 tight ends, and give some guys outside of there. So for your top 12 quarterbacks for this week, you have Kyler at 1, Mahomes at 2, Aaron Rodgers at 3, Russ Wilson, Lamar Jackson. You got Dak at 6, Herbert, Brady, Josh Allen down at 9, Jalen Hurts, Matt Stafford, and then Joe Burrow at 12. For myself, we actually have the same top 3 with Kyler, Mahomes, Rodgers. I have Herbert at 4, Dak at 5, Russ, Josh Allen at 7, Tom Brady at 8, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson at 10, Ryan Tannehill at 11, and Matt Stafford at 12. Through these top 12, through the QB1s, what stood out to you? What did you have trouble with? Talk to the folks and let them know how you're thinking about your top 12 for week 2.
Yeah, man, we are really close, honestly. I think the only name that was different was maybe Ryan Tannehill in your top 12, and then I have Joe Burrow at the end of mine. I think, honestly, the top 12 for us feels kind of maybe consensus, at least for you and me, but where I got really tripped up was kind of that last couple of guys from the Josh Allen, Tom Brady, Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, that I have those 8, 9, 10, and 11. Those 4 guys, I feel like they all have the upside to be a top 3 quarterback, right? We saw Tom Brady do it against a really easy matchup in Dallas's defense. He can absolutely do that again in a similar like matchup against the Falcons. And then Josh Allen, even though he struggled a little bit with the Steelers, and I have him a little bit down there at 9, a guy that was the QB1 last year. He again has the Miami secondary, so I'm kind of keeping him as the middle of the road, but you can see him jumping up there and being a top 3 QB. Jalen Hurts obviously has that rushing upside. Matthew Stafford, we saw what a performance he put on. So that's where it got tough for me. But no, honestly, with some of these top end guys, I think it's very set in stone. Kyler Murray, man, he's going to be a problem for defenses all season long, just like Patrick Mahomes. And that's why I actually have him, and you as well, have him over Patrick Mahomes. I think they're both going to be fantastic. But, man, I really like him going against Minnesota's secondary there. Aaron Rodgers, I think he has that bounce-back game, right? He was horrendous. It looked bad from start to finish, but that's not Aaron Rodgers. I do not think that sticks around. He's going up against a Detroit Lions secondary, which wasn't good to begin with, and now they lost Jeffrey Okudah, their 3rd overall pick from a couple seasons ago. So they're going to be rough, right? The Lions are going to be rough, and they're only going to get worse now with the loss of Okudah. So those top 3 are locked in. Wilson against Tennessee, man. I really like these top 4 or 5 guys for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we have to dive into those guys too much further. I wanted to have Russ Wilson a little bit higher, but as good as he was, like, they're just not throwing the ball that much. Like, super, super efficient. Like, that's the name of the game. Russ is going to do what he's going to do. I wish I could have him higher, but I can't. The Okudah thing for the Lions is absolutely huge. I think this is the get-right game. Having Lamar Jackson down at 10, I'm looking at Kev's rankings. He has him at 3. You have him at 5. He obviously can do it on the ground, but I think whenever he gets into situations where he is forced to throw, that's kind of where he can get into some trouble. Hey, we had week 1 Sammy week. It was fantastic. We are here for it. Hollywood Brown catching all 6 of his targets as well. They need to get Mark Andrews going. That's kind of where I sit with him. Like, it feels gross and wrong to have Lamar down there. I feel like I could probably have Stafford a tick higher. Something that we talked about when Akers went down. Like, do we just see Detroit Lions, Matt Stafford, but in a much better offense, obviously, and they just go, Buffalo Bills style offense here and just completely disregard the run for the most part and put the offense and the team on Stafford's back and let him do his thing. But outside of those guys, man, any like QB2s that you like? Is there anybody that you're fading, anything like that for week 2?
No one that I'm really fading. A couple of guys who I'd like to maybe see get a shot if you're in that tough situation. You don't have one of those guys we just listed. Sam Darnold, who had an okay showing, I think, in his first start with the Panthers against his former team. He threw a couple of touchdowns. Now he faces the Saints defense, which I get it. They just did a number on Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, but they lost Marshawn Lattimore. They lost Marcus Davenport. Both of those gentlemen are not playing, and that's 2 big key opponents for their defense. If you're talking about the pass rush to get to Darnold, and then the defenders on either Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore or Terrace Marshall, right? So I think he just has too many weapons, and he could toss another pair of touchdowns. So that's one name. Another one, I think Big Ben. He looked better than he did last year, but I don't think he looked where we want him to be. But honestly, like, I think that's just they were able to take Chase Claypool away from him for most of this game. And I get it, he has other weapons as well, but we didn't really see Chase Claypool do anything until he absolutely mossed Tre'Davious White with that, over the shoulder grab for about, what was it, 20 plus yards. And so that was fantastic. And I think now he gets the Raiders, and you're right, they have improved their defense, but looking at their secondary, I don't think it's anything fantastic. I think they can absolutely take charge of this team. And so he's a top 15 guy for me. And then Kirk Cousins, man, I think this game has a big over-under. I think it's 51 when I looked. Like I said, Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are going to be a problem for defenses. So what are the Vikings going to have to do just to keep up, right? They're going to have to score. They're going to have to throw. So you saw him throw for 351 yards and 2 scores. I get it. He had 5 quarters to do it, nearly 5 quarters to do it. But we saw Adam Thielen get a couple of scores. Justin Jefferson has that opportunity to kind of take off. So Kirk Cousins basically was a top 13 quarterback every single season except for 2019 since he's taken over as a starting quarterback. So I think sometimes we just forget because it's Kirk Cousins, right? Like, it's not like a high ceiling. So I think he's a really good streamer this week as well.
Since 2019, in his games where he throws, attempts at least 35 passes, he's averaging like 284 yards and like 2.3 touchdowns. So whenever his back is against the wall, like, Mike Zimmer needs to go. Pete Carroll both those guys need to go. I'm with you on Cousins. I think this is a really good game for him. He's going to be forced to throw. Mac Jones in a good spot going up against the Jets. You talked about what Darnold just did to them last week, so I like that. Mac Jones had a really nice debut as well. 2 guys like I'm pumping the brakes on. Jameis Winston, can he what he's being asked to do right now is he's basically being asked to be like Tom Brady for the Patriots, right? Where it's like, all right, well, there's one guy there. Like, what else are they going to do? Like, can he actually do that week in and week out? Like, I want to see it before I just throw him into the, that back end QB1, high end QB2 discussion. He looked good, but 5 touchdowns on 148 passing yards. Like, I can't get there in week 2. I want to see it a little bit more. Ben, you touched on, the only thing that worries me with Ben is that Raiders defensive line. They gave Lamar Jackson a lot of trouble, and there is an ocean-sized gap between Lamar Jackson and Big Ben in terms of their mobility and their ability to move and escape the pocket. So that is the only thing that has me a little hesitant there. Like you said, the secondary, there's nothing you're worried about. Obviously, Ben, a better, more skilled passer than Lamar is. Let's go ahead and move over to tight end. I think we can kind of comfortably breeze through these ones. But you have it for week 2, your top 12 tight ends: Kelsey, Hawk, Waller, Andrews, Kittle, Fant, Robert Tonyan, Cook at 8, Higbee at 9, Gronk at 10, Pitts down 11, and then Jonnu Smith at 12. For myself, I have a Kelsey, Waller, Hawk, Kittle, Andrews, Fant at 6, Gronk at 7, Pitts, Logan Thomas, Jonnu Smith, Robert Tonyan, and then I have Higbee at 12. So I really don't think we need to talk about the top 4, top 5 guys, that they're locked in. Let's talk about some of these other guys. Maybe you waited a little bit on tight ends. Talk about like the back half tight end ones here.
And the top guy there for me is Robert Tonyan. I was actually really critical of Robert Tonyan last year because I thought he was super efficient on just not a lot of targets, and then they brought in other weapons. And so we don't see him do anything in week 1. The entire offense was horrendous. This is a type of game where Robert Tonyan could get 2 or 3 touchdowns, right? Like, obviously Adams is going to get his, but this is a game that if you're like, hey, I need a tight end that can probably score me a touchdown. And he's not going to be on waivers. He's not going to be streamers, but you can feel, I think, a lot more confident in him getting a touchdown than a lot of these other guys just based on his connection with Rodgers. So that's why he makes it to 7 for me. And then Cook, man. Cook is a guy that is on waivers. You probably talked about him in the tight end streamer video, man. He had Yeah, he had 8 targets, 5 receptions, 56 yards, and that's really, really good usage. I know the Chargers have Keenan Allen, who they peppered with targets. They have Mike Williams, who really got involved last week. But then there's this void of Hunter Henry that we thought was maybe going to get split up with Donald Parham and Jared Cook. Does Austin Eckler really take a lot of that back now that he's healthy? And I think Eckler will get his, but we saw Jared Cook have a really healthy usage. I think he's athletic enough still at his age where he can. It's not just going to be a 3 for 30. He can get you more than 10 yards of reception. And so with that workload going against Dallas's defense, I just saw Gronk go 8 for 8 for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns or whatever it was. I don't remember the yardage, but 2 touchdowns and 8 receptions. It's a really juicy thing for him. So I have him at 8, and then Higbee, man. So Gerald Everett leaves, and this is where I think we all have been kind of thinking that Tyler Higbee can break out, right? He's going to be the only tight end in town. Matthew Stafford comes to town, and he absolutely showed why he can be an important part of this offense behind Woods and Kupp there. Gronk, I think, is he's at 10 for me. Super easy matchup again. Who can get a touchdown for you going against Atlanta? You could argue that I should have him where you have him. You could switch him and Robert Tunyon's names. I have absolutely no arguments there. The one guy I'm going to be lower on than most people is Kyle Pitts. I do think he gets worked in a little bit more than he did last week, but we're still talking about an offense that is just not clicking. And I get it's only been 1 week, but I honestly think this stems back to Matt Ryan without Julio. And I get it. Kyle Pitts kind of slides in that Julio role, but I don't think he's Julio's level right now. He could be in the future, but right now, this is Matt Ryan who has consistently struggled with his splits without Julio. And I think we saw it against in my opinion, a mediocre defense in the Eagles. And so now you have Tampa Bay, which is going to be one of the best defenses he probably faces. I think Kyle Pitts and Matt Ryan struggles in this game, which in fact makes Kyle Pitts not as high of a play for me. And then Jonnu, good matchup, can get a touchdown. He brings up the rear there at 12.
I'm not going to belabor the tight end talk any longer than I need to. I will say with Pitts, he did see 8 targets last week. With Gronk at 7, Gronk was the only tight end for Tampa to run a route, and he also dominated the snaps as well. It's not what I was expecting. The next closest was Brait, and I think he had like 14 or 12 or something. So not a factor. OJ Howard only had, I think, like 6. He only had single-digit snaps. So if that's going to be how it goes going forward, Gronk has to be in the tight end 1 discussion every single week. Outside of that, something I'm keeping my eye on, but I'm not going to tell you to add him. I'm not going to tell you to start him. But David Njoku, obviously we know he athletic freak, has all the athletic ability in the world. If he can start to take over that like 1A, 1B role with the Browns, I think that's something that can be very exciting for streaming purposes and as far as tight end goes. Anyway, outside of that, man, there's just so many. We talked about this beforehand too. Just so many like super close tight end that that are kind of just like feeding off each other, like Goddard and Ertz. I want to have Goddard in my top 12. He's sitting there at 13 for me because he has a higher ceiling than Ertz does at this point of his career. But I think Goddard only ran 6 more routes than Ertz did. I think it was like 29 to 23. We already talked about the Dallas situation. That was super close. So until some of these guys can start to pull apart, it's probably going to be the same top 10, top 12, week in, week out, maybe just in a little bit of different order.
Goddard, man, he's just splitting too many snaps. I really debated going Cole Kmet over Goddard. It just felt a little too spicy, so I'm at 14 and 15. But Cole Kmet, man, he dominated the snaps. He had most of the targets. Really, Jimmy Graham didn't have a target until I think like late 3rd, early 4th quarter. He's definitely the guy there. Goes up against Cincinnati instead of the Rams defense, so that's a much better matchup. And he had 7 targets to begin with. So Cole Kmet is a really sneaky name if you need a tight end.
Yeah, both Cook and Kmet widely available, so you should be able to go and snag them off of waivers. So that's going to wrap up the quarterback and tight end rankings for week 2. Any questions, drop them here in the video, or you can join us on the Discord and you can ask your questions over there. Till the next time, sub, rate, review, like, do all that for us. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next one.